In this video today, I'm going to show you how you can eat more in the way of food and lose more in the way of body fat, especially belly fat, as you can see right here with my client Joe, who started working with me when he was at 214 and had a really difficult time breaking 210. He loses 20 pounds in a span of 2 months and gets down to 193. So we broke that plateau very efficiently and very quickly, and he's also looking a whole lot better as well. He's almost got a flat stomach in just a few months. Steve, a network engineer who's very, very busy, lost 40 pounds in 4 months and lost all his belly fat, as you can see right here on the right before his wedding year. And 12.4 pounds down in his first 9 days. He couldn't even believe it whenever he saw the number on the scale, and his wedding tuxedo was fitting a lot better, and he lost 3 inches on the waist and 2 inches tighter on the belt just a few months into the program as well. So you're probably wondering, how is this even possible? And we're going to get into the specifics as to how this works here in a moment. But just to give you more in the way of proof, right here is Steve's meals on the left. And these two are for Joe, right? Joe, the first man you saw right over here, he's the one that lost 20 pounds in 2 months. He works in sales. He's a very busy guy. And he just needed a plan that was actually going to be effective. Little did he know that he was actually going to be eating more food, right? So with these two pictures on the right, these are Joe's meals, and with this picture on the left, this is for Steve. Now, Steve, as you can see here, it says 0 calories. Of course, there's calories that he is consuming in these meals, but he's not tracking it because he does not need to, because we are addressing the root cause of what's going on. Same with Joe. As you can see here, 0 calories. He does not need to track the calories of what he's eating. And there's certain days where he's eating, north of 3 meals, as you can see right here. So how are these guys able to eat more in the way of food and lose more in the way of body fat without having to count or track or restrict a single calorie and see absolutely ridiculous results like, what your friends may see that are also, in your social circle, your family, and, you're over here, you're counting your calories, you're restricting your calories, and you are running around like a headless chicken, like you're committed to losing this weight, but you're not seeing results like this. So we're going to fix that for you today. And if at any point you want to learn more about how I can help you specifically lose your stubborn belly fat, my links are going to be down in the video description below to speak with me directly. And if you ever need more validation like this to know that I can help you, there's a whole playlist on the top of the video description with our client transformations too. So let's jump right into this video. So the top myth that is associated with guys not thinking that they can't eat more and lose more in the way of body fat is just simply a lack of knowledge and guidance, right? I mean, the biggest common belief that I hear all the time is right here. I have to calculate my calories and I always have to put myself in a deficit no matter what the quality of my food looks like to sustain weight loss forever. And it certainly is true that you can expend more than what you're actually taking in. You can lose weight and sustain that for a little bit. But the problem is that there's just way too much in the way of disadvantages that come with a caloric deficit. And I'll link my playlist down below on why a caloric deficit does not address the root cause of weight gain and why it's a waste of time. But I'll mention briefly here that whenever you are putting yourself in a position where you're expending more than what you're taking in, you have to metabolically adapt and lower your metabolic rate. Your body has to do that to maintain homeostasis. If it were to increase the rate at which you're burning fuel with now less you're taking in, you're going to be taking steps closer and closer towards starvation, which is ultimately what this is anyway. And you're going to increase the secretion of a hormone known as ghrelin, which is a hunger hormone, and you're going to suppress the secretion of leptin, which is a satiety hormone. So your metabolic rate is going to be lower than it was before you started. You're going to be hungrier and less satiated. I've covered this with so many different YouTube videos in the past, but in case you're new here, we just need to go over a quick breakdown as to why a caloric deficit doesn't even address the root cause of weight gain. Now, what is the root cause of weight gain? The root cause of weight gain is what's known as hyperinsulinemia. That is the root cause of the problem. That is the reason why you have belly fat and body fat around your body to begin with, right? So hyperinsulinemia is just a big fancy term for insulin not only just going up, but staying elevated for hours on end. And insulin, in case you just hear the term insulin and you just think of type 2 diabetes or you don't know what it means, insulin is an anabolic hormone, which just simply means growth. So it can be responsible for the growth of good things, such as growing your muscles, or it can be responsible for bad things, such as the growth of the fat cells around your subcutaneous region, the subcutaneous adipose tissue, so the fat around your skin, right? Or it can even store fat around your organs, which is known as visceral fat, right? And those are the two main consequences of hyperinsulinemia. When insulin is constantly elevated for hours on end, this hormone is secreted by the beta cells through the pancreas, right? And is being secreted because there's just too much in the way of blood glucose, or too much in the way of glucose in the bloodstream, to where it has to constantly mitigate the negative consequences that come with elevated blood sugar levels. And it takes this glucose and it shuttles it off to be used for fuel for later by storing it into the fat cells in the subcutaneous adipose tissue, right? And whatever comes into the body, we have to utilize 110% of that fuel, right? So that's why it is storing it to be used for later. So the problem is that when this happens over and over and over again, insulin is constantly being secreted, it is constantly elevated, and having to regulate very, very high blood glucose levels, and it continues to take this glucose and shuttle it into the fat cell. This fat cell around the skin, around the subcutaneous adipose tissue, will begin to become resistant to the function of insulin, and then you'll see insulin start to store this glucose in places where it should not be stored as body fat, right? Usually in the way of visceral fat. And visceral fat, once again, is fat that is built up around your organs. And as your visceral fat levels increase, so does your likelihood of suffering from some level of mortality risk. Cardiovascular disease, hypertension, stroke, and much more, including type 2 diabetes. So insulin resistance is something that you guys are currently taking steps towards, or you may already currently be insulin resistant if you have some belly fat, because insulin resistance and having a gut, having a pot belly, having some belly fat, whatever you want to call it, are probably the two biggest consequences of metabolic syndrome. And metabolic syndrome is a fancy term for you being metabolically unhealthy, insulin resistant, having belly fat, being super lethargic, and just feeling very, very sick, feeling unhealthy because you currently are metabolically unhealthy. And that's probably something that you guys are currently experiencing that are super busy managing your careers, have a tough time getting through the day because you're so worn down, your energy is so low because you've been eating foods that have been causing this hyperinsulinemia. And it's not because you're a glutton and you're just eating too much in the way of food, just too much in the way of calories. It's because you're eating the wrong things that are giving you the wrong insulin response that have negative hormonal implications and then negative health implications. And as you can see here from earlier, these guys aren't controlling calories. They are addressing what we just went over, hyperinsulinemia, which is most likely what they were taking steps towards earlier, or they were somewhat hyperinsulinemic because they had a lot of belly fat. And then we got rid of it because we included foods here that gave them a good insulin response and allowed them to regulate insulin the right way. And that's why you see amazing results just like this with Steve and like this with Joe. So when it comes to eating more in the way of food, right, we have to address that first. We have to address hyperinsulinemia. We have to know what that is. We have to know how we can actually regulate insulin by eating good quality foods, right? So this is how you can actually eat more and lose more body fat. When you consume more calories from nutrient-dense foods, such as high-fat, higher protein animal foods and naturally sourced carbohydrates, ribeyes, chicken, seafood, naturally sourced carbohydrates such as fruits and vegetables that work for your particular fat loss goal, your body can actually boost its metabolic rate, right? So we were talking earlier about how being in a deficit can actually lower your metabolic rate, especially if it's a severe caloric deficit. Now, if you're eating more in the way of foods, especially foods that give you a good insulin response that regulate this hyperinsulinemia, that lower insulin and lower your blood glucose levels, then you are going to be putting yourself in a position where you can eat more of these foods and boost your metabolic rate. So essentially, if you eat more of these high quality foods, more in the way of animal foods and naturally sourced carbohydrates, you will metabolically adapt and increase your metabolic rate because the influx of food that is coming in has now gone up, and your metabolic rate has to go up as well to meet that demand. And if we were to lower our metabolic rate in that particular instance, even if all the food that's coming in is of high quality, we would be taking steps closer and closer towards issues and problems, right? Obviously, that does not happen, especially when we are doing weight training, right? So if you're targeting each muscle group each week and you're expanding what's called your metabolic sponge, which is really what your muscles are here, you become more insulin sensitive, so you become more sensitive to the fuel that comes in, and that's exactly what we want if we are taking steps closer towards insulin resistance. We want to be sensitive to the fuel that comes in. We don't want to be resistant to it. When that happens, and we also are eating more in the way of food from high quality foods, right, that give us a good insulin response, then we're able to eat more of those foods than we were before, especially if we weren't doing weight training before, because that demand for fuel has gone up, not only because we're eating more in the way of fuel, but also because the muscles now need more nutrients to thrive and survive to keep that muscle mass that we have obtained so that we can continue to feed them and get more of the benefits that come with higher levels of muscle mass, right? So in essence, you boost your muscle mass, you can boost your metabolic rate because you need more in the way of fuel to feed those muscles. And if you eat more in the way of high quality foods to begin with, the metabolism will actually adapt, metabolically adapt and increase to keep up with the influx of fuel that is coming in, as long as the quality is on point and as long as the hormonal implications are on point as well. So basically covered that there, right? So when it comes to eating less, you can actually lower your metabolic rate like we mentioned earlier. I already touched on this, but just to mention it again briefly, when you eat less, when you're in a caloric deficit, especially a severe one where you're expending far more than what you're taking in, then you have to metabolically adapt and decrease the rate at which you're burning fuel because there's now less that's coming in. You can't just increase it in order to reach homeostasis, that state of balance, right? Because there's less fuel coming in. We have to lower our metabolic rate to meet the influx of what is coming in, even if the food quality is on point, even if the hormonal implications are on point. And to begin with, knowing that you guys are so busy and you're constantly on the go, you're not going to be able to count and restrict calories and to count your macros, weigh your food, or control your portions and get so meticulous with this because you're already so busy with your career and you're not going to have the bandwidth to begin with to do that. So it would be far better just to have a good understanding of how your body works physiologically and how specific hormones in your body that store body fat react to the fuel that comes in. And then you don't even have to control quantity. You can focus on doing weight training over cardio, get a bigger boost in your metabolic rate, and lose more in the way of body fat, get all the other benefits that we talked about without having to count, track, or restrict calories. And this is exactly what Michael was able to do, who works long hours at his desk. He's a very busy guy, and he did try counting and restricting calories in the past with an in-person trainer, and he lost 32 pounds in less than 3 months. And as you can see here, he's state certified to teach nutrition, but everything that we have taught him has helped him tremendously to not only lose his body fat, but to keep it off indefinitely, right? And knowing that the personal trainer in the past had him counting and restricting a bunch of calories, no knock on him, but it did not help him as much as I was able to help him, right? Not saying this to be conceited, but just showing you here that if you address the root cause of weight gain, you can actually eat more in the way of food and lose more in the way of body fat, and do so without having to counter, track, or restrict calories like Michael did in the past. And it's a waste of time at the end of the day because you're not addressing what's going on. Hollis, same thing. He was a college professor and he wasn't really even exercising. We just focused on his nutrition, and he was traveling all across Europe over the summer as he lost as much weight. He broke 230 in 3.5 months, and he's right around the corner from losing 40 pounds in about a span of 4 months. I mean, absolutely insane. In the beginning of May, he's 265, and now in mid-August, he breaks 230 at 229. Once again, not counting or restricting a single calorie at all whatsoever. So if you want to learn more about how I can help you specifically lose your stubborn belly fat and get a flat stomach while eating more in the way of food and mainly focusing on weight training to get the benefits of even more of the way of benefits of a boosted metabolic rate, then click the link on the top, middle, or bottom of the video description to see if I can fully customize a plan that fits you and your busy schedule so you can start seeing results just like this. But other than that, feel free to leave a like, comment, and subscribe. Follow me on Instagram at itsbobbyobrien, and I will see you guys in the next video.